Hi there, my name's Ellie Cosgrave. I'm a research associate at University College London, working on the Liveable Cities research programme. And my work is really about the smart city and particularly governance implications of the smart city. How can governments invest better, working with communities, working with businesses to get positive outcomes from ICT in their cities? So my talk today is going to look at some global examples of what cities are really doing around the world, working with technology, working with communities. And I hope that it will give you some useful food for thought for the rest of your day. And I'm really sorry I can't be there, but if anyone would like to follow up with me, is interested in anything that I talk about today, then I would be really delighted for you to get in contact and we can have a conversation and keep it going. So a little bit about me. I have been interested in the smart city since about 2009 when I started my doctorate. It was an industrial-sponsored doctorate, so I was working within Arup, which is a engineering consulting firm. And what they were interested in was the gap that was emerging from the companies like IBM, Cisco, Siemens, these big IT firms who were progressing and pushing this idea of the smarter city, this sort of technotopian wonder world that would solve all our efficiency issues. And the city governments who are working on the ground trying to create good places for people to live in, economically vibrant and socially positive. And this gap that was existing between these two ideas, and actually what Arup wanted to do was be able to sit in between those two stakeholders and help them work better together by understanding both needs. And so really that was what my doctorate was about. And I was really fortunate in that time to be able to work on some really amazing projects. So I was commissioned by the UK government to do a global study on what the leading smart cities are doing in the world at the moment. So that was a study of 6 cities globally, and I was really fortunate to be able to interview some really senior people in government in each of those cities and hear what their strategic plans were, see what they felt the value of investing in ICT was and how they were doing it. I've also had the opportunity to work with quite a few local authorities themselves doing their strategic plans around ICT investment and the smart city. So I've worked with Bristol City Council, I've worked with London to create their Smart London plan, Peterborough, Birmingham. So I really was able during that time to get an insight on what it means to be on the ground and really trying to get value out of these investments. And more recently, I've worked with the C40 Cities Network. What we were interested in there was an idea around how IT could enable better government citizen participation. And I will talk a bit more about in a bit more detail about that later on in the talk. Another project that I'll bring in also is a project that I'm helping run with UN Habitat, which is to look at the intersection between smart, safe and sustainable cities. So I'm leading a technical working group on that as we go into Quito and the New Urban Agenda in the autumn. So I'd like to start off by really dissecting and understanding what we mean when we're talking about the smart city. Why is this something that city governments should be interested in exploring, understanding and investing in now? And what benefits are there? What's the role of government? What are we talking about when we're talking about the smart city? And for me, it's useful to understand it in 2 ways. Firstly, that the world is changing. There are external drivers that are changing what our cities look like and therefore what our individual needs are within that system. But also there's opportunities for government to use IT to do governance better to run city services more efficiently, to have better communication with citizens. So I like to characterise it between these external drivers that is an understanding that we're changing, and these opportunities that cities can start to take. So what do we mean by external drivers? Well, there's things like digital disruptions. Companies like Uber, Airbnb, Pokemon Go, perhaps even now, that are getting underneath the skin of the way the city currently operates, and really transforming the way people decide to move, the way economies of hotels, etc., actually work within the city. And it's having a real impact on local economies, local job markets, and it's something that cities need to be aware of. Also, citizens are now just expecting that they should be able to communicate with modern technology. It's expected that you should be able to email your local authority, you should be able to engage in social media. And so there are companies like Fix My Street in the UK and many similar ones globally that are really challenging government to think about new ways in which they interact with their citizens. And increasingly, as we are able to be more transparent, as we are able to open up our data, citizens are requesting that government do that. There's a request for transparency. If you're able to share this knowledge, why aren't you? And we can see that problematically, perhaps in some cases, through things like WikiLeaks, which are hacking into government systems and sharing what has been classified information. So it's important that cities' governments start to understand exactly what they should be sharing, how they should be sharing it, and understand that some of the issues that go alongside that open sharing. Also, increasingly, online activism is really challenging government to stand up and take notice of what citizens are saying. Citizens can now request debates to happen in Parliament. Activism and city protests are now tweeted, and they are become global events. It's not just a local thing anymore. So all of these uses of technology are really forcing us as government actors to understand how we can best use technology to meet the needs of people, but also respond to the changes that a lot of global companies are now enforcing on cities, like Uber and Airbnb. And but there are also opportunities. Clearly, there is an opportunity for us to run city services more efficiently. It's just about modernising city infrastructure. So smart grids, intelligent transport systems just makes us a modern service provider. But many governments are also using their data to spur technology innovation and economic development in their cities. We see this through open data competitions. New York has amazing ones, but they've been springing up all over the world in recent years. One that I really love is 596 Acres, which came out of the New York City Big Apps competition. In this competition, New York City laid out what their key urban issues are around sustainability, around mobility, and various other things, and then challenged their local communities to come up with a tech-based solution through the use of big and open data. And one of my favourites is the project 596 Acres, which mapped out publicly owned vacant lots in New York and gave that information to communities to start doing their own things about it. And here's a short video that explains that project.
There's a piece of land that I've seen since I was a kid, over like 25 years in the neighborhood, was a vacant lot. I was like, okay, who do I contact? So I went back to the 596 acre site to find, oh, it's Debbie at DCAS.
I'm really inspired. I want to start a community garden in, Coney Island. He said you should really hook up with 596 acres.
And adjacent from me, this lot that it's, sanitation is tired of cleaning it.
This dirt just sitting there, and we can be, beautifying the community. That could be a park, that could be a garden.
Let the people go in instead of an eyesore. Plant some sunflowers,
I went to all these community gardens around where I lived and no openings. So I saw one of the 596 acres flyers on the front of the vacant lot, and I gave him a call.
We help people figure out how to get from it being just a vacant lot to a space that the community can use, and then generally the groups take over.
Most of the land that we've identified is actually land that belongs to all of us as New Yorkers, and it's the land that's been assigned to all the different city agencies, but that isn't actually being used.
I'm in the process of trying to make phone calls, trying to see what's going on with that property, and I also want to get a chance to actually meet some of the community members at the church who are interested.
I know about gardening, but I don't know about organizing and all of this other stuff that comes along with it. So if I can do it, anyone can do it.
I'm really, really excited to see what I can do with this lot. It's really, honestly, it's just the beginning.
So for me, that project's a really great example of how when we take data out of city governments, we can really start to empower communities. So that was done through a government competition, but there are other ways to achieve a similar goal. In Bristol, in the UK, there's a company called Knoll West Media Centre, which is a community group that works with the government as a sort of trusted intermediary to citizens. And one of their projects is to use online engagement to create a local university of local knowledge. And what that's about is individuals within the community can set up and curate their own courses based on their own knowledge. And it was a really powerful way for people within the community to understand the value that they bring and also the great amount of knowledge that is already there. Here's a video about that project.
It took 6 weeks to get the plot on the allotment grounds.
When I come up and see the stuff growing, just feel proud of myself. And then when I take it home to my mum, she's proud of me as well.
Up. The stronger the relationship you've got with the horse, the easier the breaking process is, because they trust you. To be fair, there's just not many people that are mixed race or black that have got horses and go to shows. Whether you're black, blue, orange or purple, I'm going there to show my horse and I do what I need to do.
I've all been brought up. Any animal you kill for food. Nothing else. There ain't no other reason to kill an animal.
Yeah, a good couple of good rolls out of that one. We are needed in the community, the butchers. Then you've got a nice lean piece of beef for your Sunday dinner.
It's the want to learn, and I think if there's something that you like and enjoy, you will learn without even realising what you're doing.
I'm getting down there, I'm not getting there, that's dope cake, guys. I've made this out of a frame of an old coffee table and 2 wheels off of a pram.
I'm going to do the American roll. They're very shy, little children. Get your hands behind your back, you look untidy. But eventually, they do get there. It bothers me up inside.
I'm a youth worker. Sometimes I don't think they've got enough of a voice. Like I said to them, you can't spell knowledge without having known in it.
So for me, what both of those projects demonstrate is that IT investment in a city is not necessarily about big infrastructure projects, and it's certainly not about, the aim is certainly not that we have good IT. What the outcome here for both of these cases was around communities, and it was around what the places that people want to live in, and social outcomes and economic development. And so when we can understand the smart city as a tool by which to enable these sorts of outcomes, I think that's really the key. Another example is something called the Good Gym, which is again an online platform that allows people who decide that they want to exercise in community, that they don't want to be paying £50 a month to go and sort of stand still running in an air-conditioned room. They want to get together and have social outcomes. So this platform enables people to meet up around community projects. So that might be doing some weeding doing some weeding for people who are not able to do that, or building walls or moving rubble or any sort of community good. And so again, here we have IT supporting community development, but also healthy outcomes for citizens. So if we use these examples to reflect upon what really a smart city is, what a smart city means for local government, I think the key thing to understand is that information technology is connecting. It connects people to people, institutions to institutions, things to things. And it is also allowing a certain level of information to give us new opportunities to look at the world and look at ways of doing things. And so if technology enables us to do that, then that's not enough in itself, because what we need is citizens, individuals, to be able to access that and to be able to use that, and also government to be able to mediate and ensure that those outcomes are positive for citizens. So for me, the smart city is about technology, it's about ICT, but it's also critically about how that technology sits within community for social outcomes, and how government can mediate and ensure positive outcomes for citizens. That's my smart city. So in order to explore this idea of digital participation in a bit more depth, I'd like to talk to you about a project that I ran last year with the C40 cities. The C40 cities are a network of around 100 cities globally now who are committed to action on climate change, and particularly in working together to share knowledge and make positive change together. And so the project that I was working on was around how to use digital technologies for citizen engagement around climate change, particularly activities. And the project was called Polis Digitocracy. And that was, I'll explain the word, it was Mayor Pius, who is the current chair of the C40, is quite passionate about the fact that IT as a technology is actually fundamentally changing what governance should and could mean. It's fundamentally changing democracy. And his idea is that actually, if we look back at the original form of democracy in the Greek city-states, the polis, what that was about people coming together in the town hall, in the town square, to make decisions together. And they would be discussed and debated, and a conclusion democratically come to. And as cities grew into nations and as populations grew, it was no longer possible for government to be undertaken in that way. So we moved to representative democracy, where we elected someone to have these debates and make these decisions on our behalf. The idea that Mayor Pius is putting forward is that actually with the advent of digital technologies, digital platforms, digital participation, can we not return to that original, purer form of democracy where we come together and discuss and debate and come to decisions together rather than through individuals in Parliament? And so this idea, that's where the idea of polis digitocracy came from. It's the original polis, and then the idea of digital transforming technology, polis digitocracy. If you Google it, you can find our more detailed report. But I just wanted to point out some of the projects that I thought were interesting and would add a bit potentially to your conversation today. One is around the possibility to do genuine participatory budgeting. And I'd like to point to the example of what they've been doing in Paris, which is called Madame Mayor, I Have an Idea. And this was an opportunity for citizens of Paris to say and suggest projects that they would like to see done and pitch them on the website. And then community members or citizens can either upvote or downvote projects that they like and support projects that resonate with them, projects that they want to see happening. And Paris has committed to allocating 500 million euros to these projects proposed by citizens in the 6 years between 2014 and 2020. And so some of the most popular proposals so far, with more than 21,000 votes, is an idea to develop vertical gardens in the city. And the city is committed to investing 2 million euros in that project. Other popular projects include recycling stations, gardens in schools, co-working spaces for students and entrepreneurs. So they've did a pilot in 2014 and they got 5,000 proposals through that website. And while some proposals can only be submitted online, they were also aware of the issue of the digital divide. Who are we really accessing by upvoting and doing social engagement? So they did offline engagement as well, where people could have more traditional interactions with government. So that's a really clear example of a city genuinely committing to a new kind of budgeting, a democratic process, and that is called Madame Mayor, I Have an Idea, if you'd like to find out more about it. So another digital participation project that I really like is called Hello Lamppost, and that is actually using the infrastructure of the city itself to engage people and for people to give feedback about how they feel about the city via interacting with actually urban street infrastructure. And instead of explaining it, they've got a really good video that I'd like to play you now. So what I really like about both of these projects is that technology is now being used in ways to meet people where they genuinely are, in fun ways that actually people genuinely want to engage with and participate with, rather than traditional sort of questionnaires or surveys that city governments might have sent out to people, which is potentially less human and less engaging. So these are some examples of how technology can really start to shift and change things and meet people where they are. So a lot of the technologies and the case studies that I've talked about so far tell a really positive story of digital engagement. However, that's clearly not the whole story, and it's clearly not going to be everything that we know about what is currently happening with technology investment in cities. And so we need to dig a little bit deeper into understanding the problems. One clearly is around the digital divide. When we talk about digital engagement, who are we really engaging with, and who are we excluding by only going through those mechanisms? We need to understand the impact much better of these types of investment. I just want to bring your attention to one study by JP Morgan, which looked at how new digital service platforms like Uber and Airbnb are potentially increasing the income disparity from workers in cities. And so what they looked at was the labour platforms versus capital platforms. A labour digital platform is something like Uber, where you can download it and become a worker to top up your income through your labour and your time. A capital app or service is something like Airbnb, where you have an asset that you can use for profit. And what they found when looking at they looked at the monthly income between people who are using the labour platforms and people who are using the capital platforms, and looked at the difference in that. So what they found was that in the labour platforms, people were earning much less per month than people in the capital platforms. So and that when they decided to use Uber, what they were doing was topping up shortfalls in their income. So it was generally months where they were earning less money and therefore used the service to top up their income. A different story when you look at the capital platforms. Firstly, they were earning much more per month than people in the labour platforms, but also these people generally used the capital platform as an addition to their existing wealth. So it wasn't that they were meeting a shortfall. They have a much more consistent income level and then use these platforms to make even more money. So what we find then is that we are potentially in these systems reinforcing this economic disparity between people who have capital and can sweat it and people who are potentially in more vulnerable workplaces. They're not getting a increased lifestyle capacity through working through Uber, whereas the capital platforms are. Here's the graph that shows that information more clearly. So for me, insights like that are really important in understanding that there is a huge role of government to start to understand some of these issues and understand what sort of policies that we can put in place to start protecting our citizens. I'd just like to end on one more point, and that's around how we pay for this stuff. Where does the money come from? Is this another new thing that government has to start investing in? When I collaborated with Arup to do a study of 6 UK cities, and we looked at all of the open data that they have around what they spend their money on. And we found that on average, a city authority in the UK spends about 6% of their current budget on IT services. For us, that tells us that there is money already being spent on IT, and actually what we're talking about in the smart city is not about finding new investment, needing more money. What it is about is re-understanding why and how we make investments in IT in our cities. And if we can do that, then we can better use the things that are happening to our advantage and to the advantage of all citizens in our communities that we serve. So that's all from me, and I thank you very much for listening, and I really hope that it's contributed to your discussion today. And if you have any questions, as I said before, please feel free to get in contact with me. Thanks a lot.